never forget, I was in 4th grade and we had a school assignment. You had to write down what you wanted to be when you grow up. And I wanted to write down I wanted to be a boxer, like a fighter, but I'm like, I played football that year. I'm like, there's no way I could get hit in the face. I'm not tough enough for that. So I wrote down I want to be a basketball player one day. And unbeknownst to me, my mom saved it. She saved that, and she showed me maybe 3 years ago.
Really?
And I saw it, I'm like, and I had forgot I had wrote that down. I didn't say I wanted to play in the NBA. I just said I want to play basketball.
Okay.
And like, I think back now, and all along that journey, going through high school, going through junior high, there was many times where it didn't look like I was even going to play college. But because I had this love, you know, when you love something, you never want to quit. You never want to give up on it.
Yeah.
And whether it's basketball, whether it's, you know, in a relationship, no matter what it is, if you truly love something, you will go to the ends of the earth to see that it works.
Welcome to the Daron Earlywine podcast, where we awaken you to become who you were born to be. Here's your host, Daron Earlewine.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Daron Earlywine podcast. So excited to have you here, whether it's through YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, wherever you are at. Thanks for joining us for episode 39, where we sit down with Derick Grant, formerly of the Harlem Globetrotters. This is going to be an epic episode. I loved the Harlem Globetrotters growing up as a kid. I don't know as a kid how you can't love the Harlem Globetrotters. And we're going to hear from Derick Grant, who was the point guard, the kind of the head guy running the floor and the whole thing for the Harlem Globetrotters for 8 years. Amazing interview. You are going to love it. And hey, guys, I just want to thank you so much for those of you that have reached out and left a review, that have been sending emails, text messages to us here at Blackbird Mission, and to me personally, letting us know where you're at, what you're going through, how we can pray for you, and how the podcast has been impacting your life. I love doing this podcast. I love to see the numbers grow week to week of the downloads and stuff, but the tough part is you're just a number until you reach out to me. And then you're a name with a story and a way for us to kind of walk this path to become who we were born to be together. And so that's why I want to give a big shout out to Ezra out in California. And Ezra says, hey, I've been listening to the podcast for a while and have been very encouraged by it. Testimonies and your section of interviews with inspiring people really resonate with my desire to see the church be renewed and refocus on what makes it unique. So Ezra, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for the feedback. And I want to give a big shout out to Neil down in Atlanta, hot Atlanta, down in ATL. Neil says, hey, Darren, fellow 7 here in Atlanta. That means he's an Enneagram 7, which means our motto of life is more is better, which it rarely is. But anyway, he says, I can't even begin to express to you how much your podcast means to me. And Neil, when I read this, I was sitting on my sunroom couch, and I don't do a lot of crying. If I were a big crier, I would have been in tears reading this. Just so heartfelt to know that the content's going out and it's making a difference in your life. It means so much, man. But it says, right now I'm experiencing the unbearable weight of the death of 2 huge dreams. I truly believe God is using you and your ministry to help me hold on and begin to find hope. Thank you for what you're doing. And you know what, Neil, I just want to take a minute, man. I just want to pray for you. As I've talked about here on the podcast, the book that I'm writing now is called The Death of a Dream. And my hope is that when it's done, that it can meet people like Neil and maybe you where you're at, where you're experiencing the death of a dream and trying to figure out, how do I find the hope? How do I find the courage? How do I find the humility, the trust in God to risk dreaming again? And that's a really real pain. And I think probably all of us have experienced it in one way or another. And so Ezra and Neil, thank you so much for reaching out. And I just want to take a minute right now and just pray for Neil. God, I just want to pray for Neil down in Atlanta and what he's going through, these 2 dreams that have died. It's heavy and it's very real. And I pray, God, that you would help him as an Enneagram 7 to be able to sit in the pain, to not run from it, to not medicate it, to not deny it, but allow it to do its work. And God, I've just been reading lately different books that just talk about how wonder and suffering are 2 of the greatest pathways into the flow of your presence and understanding who you are and who we are in you. And so I pray that for Neil, and I pray that for anybody listening right now that's going through the death of a dream, that they wouldn't run from or deny or hide their pain, but they would allow you to meet them in it. And I pray, God, they would see that your grace is sufficient, not just to bring forgiveness and healing, but it's sufficient to stand next to us in the moments of doubt, in the moments of fear, in the moments of pain and of loss. And I pray that you'd help Neil to be able to literally see himself standing shoulder to shoulder with you, Jesus, as he looks at these, the death of these dreams, and that you would give him the courage and the confidence to know that his story is not done, and that he has an opportunity now to be enfolded into a deeper level into the story that you're writing through his life. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thanks so much, Neil. God bless you, man. Appreciate you. Keep holding on. Don't give up, man. Every day is a new day to dream and to create. And so, guys, this week we're sitting down with Derick Grant. Derick Grant played basketball professionally for 9 years, 8 of them with the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters. He went to college in New Jersey, where he was a NABC All-American. And his motto now is be committed to excellence. Be committed to excellence. And now Derick coaches kids, adults, corporate executives in mindfulness, positivity, and in mindfulness training, as well as actually training basketball players to be the best they can be. And this is a beautiful story. You're going to enjoy it. Derick's a great interview, great energy. But a couple things I want you to notice is there are so many common themes that you're going to hear often here on the podcast. Is Derick had a pretty poignant and monumental kind of dream seed moment, if you will. And I'm kind of using that maybe as a new phrase you'll hear. These dream seed moments where these dreams that God has placed in our life, they're placed as seeds young in our life. And for Derick, he was like 7, 8 years old going to a Harlem Globetrotters game. And he was like, this is it. Like, this is heaven. This is what I want to do. And there was a road that was not a straight path, but as he'll talk about, that winding road of discovering our purpose. And you guys have lived that. You know that, right? That it's like, I thought it was this, and all of a sudden I'm taking a sharp left, and I thought it was this, and all of a sudden I'm coming back to the right. And I'm weaving my way back and forth, trying to figure out who I'm supposed to be, and what I'm supposed to do with my life. And Derick found that. But one of the things I want you to listen for, and we're going to jump into the interview here because I want to get into it, is a phrase that Derick says when he says, certain times you're going to have what he might call brown paper bag blessings. And the moment he said that, I thought, that is so freaking good. Brown paper bag blessings, where he's saying so often the plan, the opportunities that God brings us to possibly step into the dreams that he's placed in our heart, maybe even since a young age, we want them to show up, right, with pomp and circumstance and fireworks and trumpets and a parade. And and Derick even talks about like a box with a big old red bow on it. Like, here it is. This is the thing. And you see it coming from a mile away and you're like, I can't believe it. It's happening. And so often what happens is the blessings and the opportunities that you've been dreaming that God would invite you into, they come in a brown paper bag. And if you're not careful, you want to discard them because they don't look as pretty and as fixed up and as perfect as you thought they would. And I think it has to do with something about developing our character and our humility that God knows has to happen. Are we actually committed and passionate enough to pursue these dreams that will even receive them when they come in brown paper bags? One of the stories I'll tell in the book that'll come out later this year about the death of my dream is, I remember I had this dream, right, that I was going to be in the band, create this band and travel the world and be a rock star and change everybody's lives with music. And it wasn't working. I was trying everything, and I had no friends, no food, no money, no job, nothing. I was living in a terrible duplex apartment with my brother. And the opportunity that God gave us to actually start using our musical abilities was to join a Southern gospel quartet. I think I've told you this story before. If not, when the book comes out, you buy the book, read it. And for me, it was the grossest brown paper bag blessing ever. I didn't even know what Southern gospel was. I had long hair and earrings. I was trying to be a rock and roll guy, and these dudes wore khakis and sweaters from Abercrombie, and they were everything that I didn't want to be in life. And the deal was, if I was going to be able to step into the dreams that God had placed in my heart, I had to become like one of them. No earrings, take out the hair, like take out the earrings, cut the hair, go get some khakis and a sweater. And had I turned my nose up to that brown paper bag blessing and been like, I'm too good for this. I'm not going to do this kind of thing. Like, look, this is who I am. I would have missed the opportunity that opened up literally every great opportunity for the rest of my life. That moment where some guys actually brought my brother's guitar back that he forgot in a parking lot, that moment, that knock on the door, and these two guys, my friends Ryan and Josh, sitting there and inviting me in to join this band. Had I walked away, my life would have been changed forever. And there may be a moment right now that you're looking at, and it's a brown paper bag. And you're like, this is not what I want. If I'm going to live this life that Darren's been talking about in the podcast and experience the life of my dreams and become who I'm born to be, it's supposed to be amazing and awesome and bright and glittery and awesome. And all you got is a brown paper bag blessing. But if you can humble yourself and you can step into and receive where God is taking you, what he's given you in this moment, it's amazing the doors that can open. Because God gives grace to the humble, but he opposes the proud. And so you're going to enjoy this conversation with Derick Grant. And as you're listening, maybe think back to your past couple years. Have there been some blessings, some open doors that came into your life that were brown paper bags and you threw them away? And maybe today is an opportunity to begin to change that mindset and say, hey, God, give me another shot. I'll take whatever opportunity, whether it's a brown paper bag or not, because I just want an opportunity to become who I was born to be. Let's jump in right now with Derick Grant from the world famous Harlem Globetrotters. You're going to love this one. It's going to inspire you. You're going to laugh, and you're going to enjoy it. And then we'll come back right here on the Daron Earlywine podcast. Hey, I'm excited to sit down today with Derick Grant. Derick, a lot of times I get to interview folks that I've known for a while, and I say my good friend, fill in the blank, right? But you're hopefully soon to become a good friend of mine. But I'm excited to get to meet you. You are a transformational mindset coach, basketball coach, trainer, but more than that, you spent 8 years as really the lead guy for the world famous Harlem Globetrotters, which I want to get into that, but I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me on. And when you asked me to be on, it was like I looked it up, I looked kind of what you represent, what you do, and I'm like, this is no brainer, of course. So Thanks for having me on.
Well, stoked about it, Derick. So I want to go back and just start, because we talk a lot in the podcast about helping people really become who God's created them to be. And one thing that I try to help people do is realize that there have been some seeds planted early in their life, you know what I mean, that sometimes they don't recognize, sometimes they do. But for you, there's a very pointed moment where I think you're 7 years old and you go to a Harlem Globetrotters game. Am I right?
Yes.
So take us there.
Yeah, so I was 7 years old. My parents, they grew up in rural South Carolina during the Civil Rights Movement. So both of them grew up on a farm, didn't have much. And my mom, she always stressed education, and she always stressed experiencing new things. Okay. So she was constantly taking me and my brother to go do things that were maybe out of our wheelhouse. And it just so happened going to see the Harlem Globetrotters was that trip for that night. And I had never played basketball before, didn't have a basketball at home. I was a soccer player. Soccer was easy, just kick it and run. You know, this is what I was doing at 7 years old. Fairly simple. And I remember sitting there when my parents took me and my brother, and I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm like, this is basketball? I got to play this. I'm thinking like you make jokes and you run around and you pull people's pants down. And I'm like, this is freaking awesome. And I never will forget my parents. My dad bought me a little basketball from the merchandise stand, and I can still see it now. I'm dribbling down. We were living in Rochester, New York at the time, and I'm dribbling down the street. It's probably 9 o'clock at night, and headlights from the cars are kind of beaming, hitting the street, and I'm just dribbling this ball down the sidewalk. And I remember the feeling that I felt like, this is heaven. This is it. Like, and this was my introduction to the game of basketball, ironically enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I love about, going to see the Harlem Globetrotters is there is a basketball game that happens.
Sure.
High level. I mean, all the stuff that you guys do, but there is a message, and there's just amazing entertainment that's happening. In that moment for you, what was more of the kind of the gravitational pull? Was it the game of basketball, or was it everything?
I think it was a little bit of both the entertainment side, right? Seeing that you could play. I mean, soccer was fun, but it was more fun when you scored goals, and I didn't score goals every game. So to see this game where it was like, oh my gosh, this is like hilarious. I love the feeling that this invokes. And then to see guys dunking the ball and, doing athletic things, it was like, it's like the best of both worlds. Like, it was awesome. I still can see it. I'm 38 years old now, and I still remember that moment and seeing that game back in Rochester, New York. And yeah, I still get the same feelings.
So it's an interesting thing to say. Would you say like you felt, I guess I ask this way, at that point in your life was faith and an idea that God had created you on purpose and for purposes? Was that a conversation happening in your home?
Absolutely not. I mean, we grew up in church. My parents, they're retired now. They work in the church. Like, we went to church every Sunday, vacation Bible school, Sunday school, everything.
Yeah.
But at that age, there was no concept of faith. Obviously, I knew who God was because we went to church, but there was no thought of that at 7 years old. Like, oh, well, maybe this feeling that I'm feeling is because this is what I'm supposed to be doing one day.
Right.
But yeah, it was nothing like that.
So it captured your imagination, and you had that moment where you're like, this is like heaven. I want to do this. So chart the course. At that point, what starts happening? Because I know a lot of people may have one of those moments where they're like, man, something caught my interest,
Right.
but it stayed as a conceptual idea for them, not something they actually began to put, structure and discipline and focus and go after. So fill in the blanks there from that moment to your traveling around the world for 8 years.
I was fortunate because my parents, they didn't play sports. It's two sides of the coin, so I didn't have anybody to show me really directional what the process is. But then the good side of it was I didn't have any pressure. My parents allowed me to just love the game and play it for the love of the game. Yeah. So, it started off, I bought that basketball at the game, but I didn't even have a hoop in the driveway. So I would just dribble it all in the garage and around the driveway, around the neighborhood, and then my dad ended up getting a hoop. And this love that I had for this game. And now, like, when I go and speak and work with players, I tell them, I'm like, you can never be great at something if you don't love it. And the love that I had for this game was so organic, and it started within me. This was like the seed that was planted, and going all through, I never forget, I was in 4th grade, and we had a school assignment. You had to write down what you wanted to be when you grow up. And I wanted to write down I wanted to be a boxer, like a fighter, but I'm like, I played football that year. I'm like, there's no way I could get hit in the face. I'm not tough enough for that. So I wrote down I want to be a basketball player one day. And unbeknownst to me, my mom saved it. She saved that, and she showed me maybe 3 years ago.
Really?
And I saw it, I'm like, and I had forgot I had wrote that down. I didn't say I wanted to play in the NBA. I just said I want to play basketball.
Okay.
And like, I think back now, and all along that journey, going through high school, going through junior high, there was many times where it didn't look like I was even going to play college. But because I had this love, when you love something, you never want to quit. You never want to give up on it.
Yeah.
And whether it's basketball, whether it's, in a relationship, no matter what it is, if you truly love something, you will go to the ends of the earth to see that it works.
Yeah.
And this was kind of the way my journey worked out. And like I said, there was many times where it looked like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play college. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play professional basketball. And that love is what kept me going. So, yeah.
So you ended up playing college. Things went very well for you in college, awards, accomplishments, but take us to the you get through college, and how does the process go to then being able to play professionally with Harlem Globetrotters?
Yeah. So in my mind, happens a lot. You have one idea of how things should be, and then what actually happens is completely different.
Yes.
And I never forget, I was a sophomore in college, had a good year, and we're working out with our strength and conditioning coach, and I'm like, yeah, I want to be an All-American next year. Now, mind you, my sophomore year, I did well for me, but like being recognized, I didn't even make all-conference. And he said that. He goes, how are you going to be All-American? You're not even all-conference. How are you going to be recognized on a national level? You're not even recognized on a local level. And I remember that just broke my heart. And I swear I remember my mom, I was probably like 4 years old when she started doing it. She would point to my heart, and she would tell me, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. All that matters is what you feel in here. And I remember when he said that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to work harder. I'm going to prove him wrong. Yeah. I'm going to prove him. So the next morning at 6 a.m., I was on the track by myself. Nobody ever saw me. Nobody ever knew. Now, was I All-American my junior year? No. But my senior year, I ended up being named All-American. And the point of it is like when you believe in something, when you believe that you're capable, when you believe it and you're willing to work at it, anything's possible. And this was the mindset I had leaving college. It was like, okay, I'm going to go off. I'm going to play professional basketball. I'm thinking I'm going to go play in Italy, make X amount of dollars a year, having everything be perfect. And then I go to like 5 or 6 exposure camps where scouts and agents are there to sign you to teams. And I had 2 deals fall through at the last minute, one to go to Argentina, and I forgot where the other one was. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not going to happen. Mind you, I left school, or I still had like 12 credits. I left school early. I left school and didn't finish school. Now, my mom, a little background on her, she's a college professor.
I'm going to guess this conversation didn't go well.
No, did not go well.
Mom, I got a dream. You need a degree.
And then when the time had passed, so I left school in May, usually guys sign to go overseas or play professionally in August, at the latest September.
Okay.
I had nothing. And my mom was just kind of looking at me like, I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, now what do I do? Now what do I do? And I remember the feeling of like, it was weird because the circumstances, the external circumstances were saying it's not going to happen. But I still felt inside like, no, this is like, I don't know how. I have no idea how, but I'm going to end up playing professional basketball. And so I'd say that, I tell that story because now when I work with players, I work with people, everyone thinks that the journey to your destination is just like constant incline and everything's smooth and it's steady. And I'm like, usually it's a windy road with a lot of dips, but those dips is where you find out who you really are so you can get to the top.
Yeah.
And I ended up, ironically enough, my buddy asked me to go try out for a team, a little ABA team. They only played on weekends in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And we went, played really well. Coach starts walking up to me. I'm like, okay, cool. At least I have this. And he goes, man, you played great. But I'm like, oh my gosh, not again. He was like, I already have my team picked. We just had to have a tryout to give other people, but I already have my roster.
Oh, man.
I'm like, we drove 2 hours for this. But then he says, hey, how about this? I have a buddy of mine who's the general manager of a team, and I think you'd be great for him. I said, okay, cool. What's the team? He said, the New York Nationals. I'm like, New York Nationals, okay. So I go home and I Google the New York Nationals. They're the team that play against the Harlem Globetrotters every night. Yeah. So I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, okay, I go from being an All-American to now I'm going to lose every single night. I'm like, there's no way. So I call the guy back, and I'm like, thanks, but no thanks. And I went back and told my dad. My dad's like, wait a minute. I thought you wanted to play professional basketball. I said, yeah, I do. He goes, are they going to pay you? I said, yeah. He's like, are you going to play basketball? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, here it is right here. What do you, like? I remember thinking, I'm like, wow, you'll get your blessing, but it usually won't come in the big shiny box with the bow like how you think.
Yeah.
It usually comes in a brown paper bag that's crinkled up, and we're like, oh, I don't want that bag. But if you open it up, you'll see the same thing in that bag was the same thing that was in that box.
Wow, yeah.
And I ended up calling the guy back and eating crow and say, hey, sorry, I didn't mean it. But I ended up playing a year for the New York Nationals and losing every single night, right? But because I did that, I developed a relationship with the guys I was guarding on the Globetrotters.
Yeah.
I tell that story, and I don't mean to make this a long-winded answer.
No,
but
it's great. This is what we're here for.
If it was not for me playing for the Nationals, when I actually got asked to try out for the Harlem Globetrotters, because they saw me play every night, and they were like, we love your smile, we love your charisma, we love the way you play. We think you'd be an asset if you came and played for us. Well, ironically enough, the tryout was here in Indianapolis at what high school is that? Arlington High School.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have the tryout, and I was so nervous. I mean, I was so nervous. I couldn't explain. My first shot in a scrimmage hit on the other side of the backboard. I'm like, it would look like I just launched it at the hoop. And I was so nervous. And the guy, I never forget, his name was Kieran Shine. He played at the University of Memphis. Well, I had guarded him the year before when I played for the Nationals, so we knew each other. He has this thick country accent. He's like, hey, man, I just want to tell you, I can tell you're nervous, man. I'm going to just help you out, man. I'm going to let you shoot the ball 3 times, but I'm not going to guard you, but I'm going to make it look like I'm guarding you. I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to get 3 good, clean looks. You know, as a shooter, it's like, if I know I'm going to get a clean look, I can make one of the 3, and I only need 1 to go in. Yeah. So I ended up hitting the first one. It's like, okay, I'm settling it. I hit the second one. Like, okay, I'm settling. I hit the third one. And I'm thinking like, I hit 3 shots in a row. Like, I'm good. I'm ready.
Yeah.
So I go to shoot the 4th one. I'm like, okay, I'm getting a 4th. And he blocks me. And I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, what are you doing? He goes, man, I can't let you kill me, man. What are you? But I told you 3. Right? I got a little greedy. But my point of it is, it's like, everybody needs someone to help them along their journey. And I never would have thought, like, I tell people now, if it was not for me playing for the Nationals, I don't know if I would have played for the Globetrotters. Because this relationship I had with Keyron, he felt like I could trust him. He said, I'm gonna let you get going. He actually, like, that was a favor that he did for me. He had the goodness of his heart. He didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But because we had a relationship, he was willing to do that. So I just say that because it's so cool looking back on life. Usually while you're in it, you can't tell. But when you look back on it, it's like, wow, man, I had no idea. And the dots always end up connecting.
Derick, let's go back real quick because I think this is huge. I got 3 sons, 16, 14, and 10 right now. They play sports. And this doesn't have to be about sports because I think it relates to every element of life. People may think I'm, sick and demented or something when I say this, but some of my favorite, I don't know if I should say favorite, but favorite moments for my sons is when they fail. I look back and there's been a couple of times where, my oldest son was, everybody thought he was going to make the A team and he made the B team or he made the C team. And all these disappointments, what I got to watch in him is that character development. Do you really love this? Do you really want to to accomplish this? Are you willing to put in the work to actually succeed? And I think there is maybe I shouldn't use the word pandemic, but a pandemic of us trying to keep our kids from failure. And my take is that it's robbing them of really becoming who God's created them to be, or just good people in some ways. And I see that in your story that if your parents or friends would have been like somehow, look down on the opportunity to play for the national, and you know what I mean? You would have lost everything that has become the momentum of your life.
Right. I tell people, and I may sound crazy for saying this.
Okay.
There's no such thing as failure. I tell people, I've never failed one time in my life. And if you look at your own life and ask yourself, where have you failed? Like, truly, where have you failed? You can't find a place. You may have a place where you have stumbled, where you fell, but you got back up. So did you really fail? My kids are young enough now where I'm starting to see this concept of failure being introduced into their lives. And I tell my son, I'm like, you can't fail in life. All you can do is learn. This is it. You have desirable situations, which we refer to as success, and then we have undesirable situations, which we refer to as failure. The lesson on the desirables is on the surface. The lesson to be learned is usually on the surface. And with undesirable, the lesson is usually tucked up underneath it. I said, if you use every opportunity that is undesirable really as a situation to teach you, now you can never fail in life. And those things that would be deemed as quote unquote failures, those are actually meant to teach you, and you just became better because of it.
Yeah.
So I tell people now, I had to go through what I went through. If not, I would not be where I'm at today. So really, was what I went through really that bad? No, it made me better.
Yeah.
And I think just a simple shift, and that's what, I don't know how long I have on earth, but this is the message I'm trying to preach to people. Stop thinking of yourself as less than or that you failed. There is no such thing. This is a man-made concept of failure. You cannot fail. You must learn. You must extract the lesson and learn from it. And that is your own doings.
Yeah.
So,
It's beautiful, Derick. So through that journey, where was, for you personally, the thought of maybe God nudging or guiding that journey? Was that a process or something that you saw in the foreground of your life, or was prominent? Where did that shake out?
I think now looking back on it, there's no doubt in my mind that it was divinely orchestrated, that God was steering my path. But I was so spiritually naive that, I didn't know. Now I can tell you, I always had this feeling, it's hard to explain. When you just know. Mm-hmm. I always had this feeling I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And there were many naysayers or many people who said, well, now how? How are you going to? I don't know. But I just know I am. I'm kind of in that stage right now in life where it's I only know what I feel. I know what I'm capable of.
Yes.
Even though it may not look like it, if this thing called time just continues to play out, it will happen. And I think growing up, my parents, my mom always, and I say my mom, my dad was there, but he was traveling a lot with work. My mom always put in me, just believe. This is really this is what faith is, right? Having faith, believing in something that cannot be seen.
Yeah.
And that starts inward, right? And I try to tell my kids this. I tell them, me and my wife have conversations about this a lot. Stop looking at the external circumstances because the internal is really what dictates the external. The unseen is what dictates the seen. Focus on your faith and believing in yourself and your capabilities and that which you cannot control. God will see to it that whatever it is, it will work out for you regardless. It may not be what you think it should be, but it'll still work out for you.
I love it. So right now you're a transformational mindset coach, and I know you've been, you traveled the world with Harlem Globetrotters. Now you're in a new season of life. You're training basketball players. You're training mindset, and your slogan that you come back to is this idea of being committed to excellence. So unpack that a little bit about what does it mean to be a transformational mindset coach, and how does that idea of it and the reality of being committed to excellence weave in there?
I went through a tough time. 2019, me and my family, we actually moved down to Naples, Florida. Got involved with I thought was a friend. Did a complete 180. Before I know it, we moved back 365 days later with nothing. I'm talking about like nothing. I literally took my last $200 to pay for gas to drive back.
Wow.
Nothing. And we come back and I'm just dejected. Like I'm in the lowest place that any human being. I would wake up every morning and just like cry. I couldn't think. I couldn't even pray. Like I didn't know. I'd never felt this before. And when I got back, I'm like, okay, I got to figure out something. So I started working on me, right? I'd go get a chair and go sit out in the woods and just sit out in the woods and just reflect and write down whatever I was feeling. And I started this journey inward. And I started to find out things about myself. I started to see like, okay, this is why you feel this way. This is why you do this. And through this evolution, I started understanding who I am. Because before that, when I was in the woods, I heard this voice, right? The Spirit said, get to know who I am, get to know who you are. And I remember thinking like, first of all, who said that? One. Two, okay, who said get to know who I am? Who is that? I know I know me, but who's the I? It was God telling me, like, you need to know who I am and get to know who you are, and now you can move forward.
Yeah.
And like I said, I went through this tough time in 2019. It made me realize that how powerful the mind is. And I took a step back from the situation. I never would forget. And for those of you who are listening, I'm sure you've probably had this. I got mad at God. I was mad. Like I was angry. I woke up one morning. I'm like, why? What did I do to deserve this? Why is this happening to me? And I remember sitting there, and the voice, the Spirit said, it's how you're viewing it. It's how you're looking at it. So I took a step back, and I'm like, what does that mean? It's how I'm looking at it. This situation only is what it is because of how I'm viewing it. So I'm viewing this as a quote-unquote bad situation. That's only because I'm perceiving it that way. That's a choice that I'm making.
Yeah.
I could take this same situation, flip it, and say, you know what? I'm going to use this as an advantage. I'm going to use this to propel me. So that's what I started doing. I said, you know what? I'm going to figure out this thing called the mind and mindset and how it works. And I'm going to start working on me, and then I'm going to start teaching it to other people. And I realized from working with athletes, when you work with guys who are, NBA All-Stars, and you work with little kids who are starting their freshman year of high school, you see really the only thing that separates them, obviously the physical stature and the skill set, but that can be worked on. It's the mindset. It's the mind. The mind is the only thing that separates the good from the great. And I realized, I'm like, okay, if I can teach this, if I can start teaching how you develop this mindset of greatness by being committed to excellence, I might have something here. And the whole slogan of being committed to excellence, what this basically means is excellence is the highest standard, and you commit yourself to it. You say, no matter what, this is what I'm going to, whether it's making up my bed, whether it's being a husband, whether it's, my job, I am committed to excellence in every single thing that I do. And when I came up with this slogan, it was really like, this is a lifestyle. It's not like, oh, I go to work, I'm committed to excellence. And I go home, I'm just, mediocre. No, it's everything that you do.
Do you think that's something that can be taught, or is it you've got it or you don't?
I used to say you either have it or you don't, but now I'm realizing we all have this seed of greatness inside of us, all of us. The problem is that we get caught up in being what the world has taught us to be. And when you are what the world has taught you to be, you don't realize what you truly are. You are the breath of God. You have infinite capability, infinite talent inside of you, but you're identifying with that which can be seen. That which you actually are cannot be seen. So now my mission, my goal is to teach not just athletes, but everyone, like, stop identifying with this and start looking at what cannot be seen, and you will see that everything that you need is already inside of you.
Yeah.
You have to go look for it, though.
Yeah. I love it, Derick. It's so on point with what we teach in our spiritual DNA workshop, and helping people understand that when you are brought to life by the breath of God, like, you literally have been given everything you need for who you were created to be. It's in your spiritual DNA. And I think what's so telling, and I tell people this all the time, is that oftentimes when we're facing some kind of mental and/or spiritual attack, often the two things that are attacked are the character and identity of God and the character and identity of ourselves. Right. You know what I mean? And like you're talking about the situation when you're, when the wood's trying to figure it out, is this how I'm looking at it? Is God mean, vindictive, hates me, wants to destroy my life? Or is, like you're saying, on the underside of this, is there something I'm to learn because he's propelling me forward to who he's actually created me to be and what I'm stepping into?
I've come to look at life now. I've realized that this thing that we call life is just one big experience, and we measure this experience by feelings. So we go on vacation, we fall in love, we do all of these things, we eat foods that we shouldn't eat because of the feelings. Right? This is it. And we measure it by feelings. I started to realize, well, a feeling is governed by a thought. So I feel what I feel. If I feel good, it's because I'm thinking good thoughts. So I started to realize, if I can control my thoughts, then I can control how I feel. So regardless of the situation, I can look at the situation as a positive so long as I can think and extract a lesson from it. Yes. So this is what I started doing, and I do this every day, everything with life. Like, I don't have bad days. I don't have bad situations. When something happens that's unfavorable, undesirable, that's a trigger for me. Like, okay, I'm supposed to learn something here, and it's tucked away, and I got to find it. I got to go look for it. So when you do this, when you have this perspective, now it's like, I can't lose. I can't lose. There's nothing that's here to harm me.
Yeah.
It's only here to teach me. And I talk to my 8-year-old. I have conversations with him all the time, and I tell him, like, understand that your life, think of it like school, but it's flipped around, right? So you go to school now, and he hasn't started really taking tests yet, but sooner than later he will. Think of it like this. When you're in school, the teacher teaches you a lesson, and then you have a test. Right? And the test is to make sure that you have comprehended the lessons that were taught. Life is the other way around, though. First, the test comes, and then you learn the lesson. So when I have, like, having this perspective, anything that's struggle, it's hard, I say, okay, here's my test.
Yeah.
I gotta extract a lesson from this. It's my responsibility. Life brought the test. I have to learn from this.
I love it. Derick, I love that, and I think one of the difficult things, I know for me, maybe for a ton of folks, is oftentimes the to use maybe a spiritual term, the revelation that we need about the lesson, right? It often only comes through rest and reflection. If you're going a million miles an hour, oftentimes you miss it. I know you're passionate about meditation and mindfulness, and when you work with your clients, whether it's with basketball or just life in general, talk to us about how important that is.
So, I speak candidly about this because in the Western world, especially within Christianity, it's like meditation. No, that's what other religions do. Right, and I'm like, I try to teach people. I was actually coaching somebody who worked in a church, and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to do that because that's what I'm like, okay. Here's what it does. It actually, think of it like we go to the gym, we go to work out, right? Yeah. And we lift weights, we do bench press. Bench press strengthens our chest and our triceps, and meditation strengthens your mind. It allows you to control your thoughts.
Yeah.
Well, I know that my thoughts are what dictate how I feel. So if I can control my thoughts, I can actually control the way this thing called life feels.
Yes.
So why would I not just make life feel grand and great all the time?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do it if you don't have control of your thoughts. So I started meditation back in August of 2020. I tell people I just stumbled into it. I never forget. True story. I took my daughter and my son to fish. And my daughter was in the car. And I went back to get the stuff because we were leaving. Well, she got out of the car on the street side. And I turn and glance, and I see a car coming. And my daughter's, she's 5 at the time, 5 at the time, but she's the size of like a 4-year-old. She's tiny. And I'm like, I turn and glance. It's like life just stops. And I see this lady driving the car, and she can't see my daughter. I'm like, my daughter's going to get hit by a car. And I can't see my daughter, but as the car goes by, I see her come around, and I'm like, I just scream her name. I'm like, Ruby! And, thankfully she didn't get hit, but on a stack of Bibles, this voice goes, I allowed her to live so you could help your son. And I'm like, what does this mean? What does this even mean? And for months, I always thought, and like, I didn't tell anybody, I didn't tell my wife. I'm like, I don't know what this meant when I heard this voice. The day after that, I started meditating. 5-6 months later, my son was really struggling with anxiety, struggling with just the pandemic and not being able to be around friends, and to the point where he would literally make himself sick.
Wow.
So I started meditating with him, teaching him, follow your breathing. Let's just be quiet, right? Control your thoughts. And it started to help. And I realized back then, the whole point of it was to help him. When I heard that voice say, to help you, this helped ease his mind. And I had never been introduced. I just, like I said, I stumbled into it. Meditation allows you to hear God's voice and like stillness, quiet. God doesn't need to yell. It's whispers. It's whispers. So going out in the woods, unbeknownst to me, now I look back, this was God ordering my steps. Yeah. I could have went anywhere. I could have went and sat in a coffee place, like anywhere. But I went in the woods where it was quiet, where it was purely only God. When you see nature, I tell people all the time, go out in nature for a little bit. You will literally see God in nature. Everything, trees, birds, the water, God created it.
Yeah.
So meditation, mindfulness, I have found, it separates too. I tell people all the time, I found out truly what I was when I meditated.
Yeah.
I'm not my body. I'm not my body. I'm not even my mind. I have a mind.
Yeah.
I have a body. I am the vessel, the spirit inside driving, using the body as a tool to carry this out.
Yes.
Meditation helped me see that. So now I'm working with athletes. I'm helping stay-at-home moms, corporate executives, to show them this lifestyle, these things of the world that you're caught up in. If we can get a spiritual practice of meditation, you will actually see, my gosh, I'm not any of these things. Yeah. So now when I realize I'm not any of these things, I don't feel as though I have to be a certain way to impress somebody, and your pressure that you put on yourself goes down.
So beautiful, Derick. So good. And I love the point you brought out that within, the Christian tradition, people are like, oh, well, meditation, what is that, some weirdo? It's like, just go read Psalms, right? Like, how often is David like, yeah, I'm all night, I just stay up and meditate on who you are and your precepts. So it's like, it's so key. And I think it's something that is so necessary. And I think going forward, I don't think it's an accident at all that the timing that this is happening, because what I'm seeing in kids all the time right now, and what I'm concerned about for the kids as we've coming out of the pandemic, is that they have been seeped in fear for a year. And as adults, it's messed with our brains. Right. And we're 40-year-old, 30, 40-year-old people that have some coping mechanisms. We know how to think through these things. But what I think is going to be so necessary, and I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing in our community and around the country, is because there's going to be kids that are going to need, that are going to have to learn that they can control their thoughts. They can control that fear and not allow it to steal their future, not allow it to steal their present, and they can step through that. So I think it's perfectly timed for where you are.
No, absolutely. And I talk to my wife about this all the time. Like my goal would be get into school systems.
Yeah.
And teach this. Like, I don't have anything against school, but let's teach these kids how to deal with anxiety. Teach them how to deal with depression. Teach them to control their thoughts. If you can control your thoughts, you literally will control how life feels. This is why, like, we see billionaires going and getting help from Buddhist monks, but we don't see Buddhist monks getting help from billionaires, right? They've figured out how to, like, they go and meditate for hours. They have full control over their mind.
Yeah.
And I never forget, it was before I started meditating, when the quarantines first happened, I was in charge of e-learning because my wife had to go and I was flexible enough to be home. And one day I had a Zoom call, my kids had a Zoom call. I'm just like, I don't have any hair, but I was ready to rip it out. And I'm like, I just need to go sit out on the porch and just take some deep breaths and be quiet. Well, I'm sitting there and I see a little bird hopping around. This little robin is hopping around. I'm just looking at the robin. I'm like, dude, you don't know how good you got it right now. You don't have to worry about this internet going out. You don't have to worry about Zoom calls. But I started to look at him like, he has no stress. He's not worried. He's literally just hopping around carefree. And then he found a worm, kept moving, hopped around. But he never looked like, oh no, what am I going to do? What else is? And I realized, okay, God gives everything that it needs up front. We have everything that we need.
Yeah.
It's already prepackaged. And I'm sitting here looking at this bird thinking, I'm like, okay, everything that it has it for a reason. God doesn't give anything extra that would be just, you don't need it. So I started thinking about the mind. I'm like, we have a mind for a reason. And the whole reason for it is so you can create life to feel how you want it to feel. This is why. But the problem is, we think we're our body, we think we're our money, we think we're our cars, our job, our status, we think we are our thoughts. We're none of these things. And meditation will allow you to separate your spirit, your soul, that which you actually are, from that which you're not. And when you have that separation, you can see, oh my gosh, I cared what people thought about me because I thought I was my body. But now when I realize I'm actually the spirit inside of the body, I can just appreciate this body for what it is. It's just a tool that I'm using. Yeah.
It's identity. It's so crucial, Derick. I love the message that you're bringing forward. And I just think back, thinking through your story, what I think in what I love about this is you could look at your life from the outside and somebody could be like, oh, you accomplished the dream. And so the point of your life was to play professional basketball and to entertain people and, to make money and travel the world. And you could look at it and go, somebody could even look at your life and be like, oh, well, now you're not Harlem Globetrotter anymore. And there's no, the fans aren't there, 1,000 people cheering your name. And realizing, because I looked through it, realizing I love how good God is that he gave you a dream that he brought to life in you as a 7-8-year-old kid. And you got to do that, which is awesome. You accomplished that goal. You were a professional basketball player. But what I see is all of that, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, was to prepare you for, I think, what is going to be your greatest work, which, it's given you a platform. It's given you credibility within the sports world. It's set you up to be able to use the things he's teaching you now. And I think, the impact, you could play for the Harlem Globetrotters for 25 years and do good. Right. But I'm excited because it's just so cool to see how he allowed you to live a part of that was your dream. But now I think you're stepping into a dream that is 10 times the size of that, and the impact is going to be just massive.
It's cool to hear you say that because, like, I always thought basketball. Mm-hmm. And now, like, I've realized, like, okay, I was fortunate enough to play basketball up until I was, 31 years old, right? But I don't play basketball anymore. And if I live to be 75, I got a lot more life not playing basketball than I do basketball. And I started to see, like, I can use basketball as a way to help people with life. This is the beauty of sports, right? They're intertwined. Like, if I can teach you the game of life using the game of basketball as an avenue, this is it. Yeah. And it's funny you say that because I look back now and I see, like, oh, I know why I played for the Harlem Globetrotters. I thought it was to say I traveled to 70 countries and got to do this. And no, it was the stepping stone for me to get to a place, to have a platform, to be able to walk up into someone's life who I don't know and say, hey, why don't you try this, this, and this? And they will respect me enough and listen to say, oh, well, he kind of knows what he's talking about. So it's just amazing to see how God works. And to me, the coolest thing is always looking back and you see like, wow, the dots weren't random. They were all connected to begin with.
Derek.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So somebody's listening right now, they got a kid, they're like, I want them to be exposed to this kind of mindset coaching, or they're executive, or they're a soccer mom, and they're like, I need to get control of my thoughts. I need this. How do they get connected to Derick Grant?
So you can go to my website, DerickGrantResults.me. It's DERICK, Derick Grant. And then you go on social media and find me on there, Derick Grant Results on Instagram, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and then Twitter's DG Results. And I always tell people, this is why I'm here, right? My purpose here on earth is to help people remember truly what they are. And send me an email, send me a DM. I would love it. I mean, I love when I get a new message from somebody and they're like, hey, what? I'm like, yes, let me help you. Yeah. So, yeah.
Derick, it's been a joy. Such good stuff. I know so many people are going to be helped by this conversation, so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And we're back. I took that one up an octave. I don't know what happened there. It was like one of those Bobby Brady voice crack situations. Goodness gracious. Hey, guys, I told you, Derick Grant just bringing the fire. Such a great conversation with him. Derick, thank you so much for being on the podcast, brother. Can't wait to partner up with Derick and do some stuff in the future. We may try to get together and do some stuff in some public schools together. Such good content. And here's what I want to pull away for our closing thoughts today is what Derick talked about this commitment to excellence, and specifically in the attitudes of your mind. This is absolute solid gold for you to become who you're born to be. Because let me tell you this, the majority of battles you're going to win or lose that are going to determine the future of your life are going to be fought and won between your ears, right here in your brain. And I think so often we want to make things seem spiritual because God's involved, but the reality is that we interact with God often through our spirit, but often so much of it happens in our mind. And when you look at some of the passages in the Bible that talk about, right, that you're going to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That as your mind is renewed, right, that you'll actually be able to participate in what God's doing, right? His good, His pleasing, and His perfect will. There is a process of us choosing what we put in our minds and what we focus on. And this is what Derick's talking about so much about mindfulness and meditation. It is so important that you take responsibility for your thoughts. I remember years ago preaching a sermon, and before the sermon, I sent out a Facebook message actually, and I said, "Hey, could you comment for me on the ways that you talk to yourself? What are some of the names you call yourself when you fail or when you let yourself down?" And the list of names that came through. I actually did this a couple months ago. I preached a sermon and I had a text number set aside and said, I want you guys to text what you call yourself. And it was burdensome to read through the text message and realize what people say about themselves. And you think about the things that you're thinking, that you're saying to yourself about yourself as you're going through life. Often when you lose or when you fail or when you don't measure up, there's a scripture in 2 Corinthians that talks about that we don't wage war as the world does, but that we actually we come against anything that sets itself up against God's kingdom in our life, and we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Jesus Christ. That is a scripture that is an absolute amazing tool for spiritual warfare and for mental battles in your mind, to take every thought captive and make it obedient to Jesus Christ. And so as you have wild thoughts that come through your mind, whether they're negative, whether they're inappropriate, whatever they may be, that you know they're not in line with becoming the person God's created you to be, I want to encourage you to actually begin saying out loud, I take that thought captive and I make it obedient to Jesus. I have prayed that prayer millions of times. I'm not even exaggerating in my life, because the battle for your mind is so foundational for you to become the person God's created you to be, for you to have the joy and the peace and the patience and the kindness and the goodness and the gentleness and the self-control within the relationships that you have around you, because your life is relationships. The battle happens in your mind. And so those thoughts, right, those thoughts that come into our mind, they become attitudes. Attitudes becomes actions, and actions are what comes out of our life. And when Derick's talking about his perspective, right, and it's actually a quote from Nelson Mandela that I love, where he said, I never lose, I either win or learn. right? When Derek's talking about, I've got a perspective now where I can't fail. And it's just as Nelson Mandela said, I never lose. I never lose. I either win or I learn. You see, that's a perspective thought. But if you take that and you begin to actually believe that and you put that at work in your life, it's amazing what will begin to happen in your life, because what happens is now you're taking control of every thought that pops into your brain. And if you can't fail and you never lose, guess what you never are? A failure. Guess what you never are? A loser. Like, just think about it. In your life, if you decided that, here's the deal, is if I am who God has said I am, in everything I do, I have nothing to prove, no one to please, right? And I don't have to perform for anyone. I am completely, perfectly loved in who I am. So me and God are good with that. And something has happened that is undesirable. I wish it wouldn't have gone like this. This wasn't the way I wanted it to happen. I'm a freaking loser. I'm a freaking failure again. No, like, then all of a sudden you have self-fulfilling prophecies going into your brain when you could stop and you can go, you know what? I'm not a loser. Like, I'm not a failure. Like, I didn't win here, so I'm learning here. That's a game changer. That changes the trajectory of your life to say, you know, I don't lose. I don't fail. I learn. And learners become leaders. And that's what God has created you to be. Such great stuff. I can't thank Derick enough for that thought. A couple of thoughts real quick. I want to just tie to scripture, right? We talked about that commitment to excellence in everything that you do. It made me think of Colossians 3:23, where it says, put your heart and soul into every activity you do, as though you are doing it for the Lord himself and not merely for others. So powerful, right? Put your heart and soul into every activity you do as though you were doing it for the Lord himself, not merely for others. This is another mental focus deal, right? Am I working for Bill, my manager who drinks too much coffee and smells like cigarettes? No, I'm not. If I do, I'm going to get a negative mindset here and not actually be excellent. What if I came to my work and say, you know what? Yeah, Bill is this, but listen, that's okay. Bill's Bill. God loves Bill the same way God loves me. And I'm not working for Bill. I'm working for the Lord here. So I'm going to do everything I do. I'm going to be committed to excellence. And if you're committed to excellence and you're realizing I can't lose, I can't fail, I just either win or I learn, and I'm moving through becoming who God's created me to be, even if this job with Bill is a brown paper bag, I can't say it right, a brown paper bag blessing. I don't like this job. I don't like what's going on here, but God is using it to give me opportunities. God is using it to give me a paycheck so I can pursue my dreams, whatever it may be. I'm now at a place with my mindset where I say, you know what, I'm doing this as I'm doing it for the Lord. And as I'm committed to excellence, right, I'm going to pursue excellence and I'm going to actually begin to perform at a higher level. Now, before you know it, maybe I'm getting promoted. Now, maybe before you know it, I'm the manager. Now, before you know it, I'm seeing myself win and win and win because I'm committed to excellence, because I don't serve Bill, I'm serving the Lord. It's all connected. It's all connected. Such good stuff from Derick Grant. Derick, I can't thank you enough. Last thing I want to talk about a little bit about that, the meditation and mindfulness. And if you've done any study on the Enneagram, we're getting ready to release in the next month, we're going to release Spiritual DNA 2.0. We're editing the videos, we're putting together the participant's guide, and we're adding the Enneagram to Spiritual DNA. And you can go check Spiritual DNA 1.0 at spiritualdna.me if you want to. That will be the same website when we launch Spiritual DNA 2.0, but it'll be at spiritualdna.me. In the Enneagram, one of the things I'm going to talk about is 3 of the spiritual disciplines that can help unlock a healthy path to your true self are stillness, solitude, and silence. And when you look at this idea of mindfulness and meditation and getting alone with God and in his spirit, embracing solitude, getting alone, embracing stillness and silence, and beginning to fill your mind with the truth of God, of who he is, of who he says that you are, it's amazing what begins to happen as you begin to bring your thoughts and your spirit in line with the thoughts and the spirit of God. And that's so much what meditation is about, and being able to quiet yourself and slow yourself down enough to hear from God. If you haven't had any experience in that, you can take a look at some stuff. Richard Rohr has great writing on this. Richard Foster has great stuff on this. Dallas Willard has some great stuff on this. Finding some guidance in spiritual disciplines so you can step into this idea of being able to control your mind and allow it to guide and direct your life in the way that God has created you to live. Such good stuff. Thank you, Derick, and thank you guys so much for listening. Hey, guys, before we say goodbye, I want to invite you into something. You're going to hear this for the rest of this summer, and it's an opportunity that I'd like to bring to you is we do the Darren Earlywine podcast, we do Spiritual DNA, the online course, we run pub theology here locally in Indianapolis, and we are a nonprofit, and the nonprofit is called Blackbird Mission, and we are a 501c3. And right now what we're trying to do is we're trying to close the gap of some of the deficit we have financially to be able to operate at full capacity as a ministry. And there's some really cool stuff coming on, like I talked about, the relaunch of Spiritual DNA, the book. We've got some other stuff in the fall that I'm going to tell you about as we get it planned out. But we really need some new monthly financial partners to help us close some of the gap. And so I want to invite you to become a podcast partner. And what we're asking you to do is to pray about it. Consider a $40 kind of easy give plan that you give $40 a month to the podcast. And if you go to blackbirdmission.com/give, and you'll take you to the website, and there's a drop-down menu that says the Daron Earlywine podcast. And if you'd like to join as a podcast partner at $40 a month, we're going to send you one of the Daron Earlywine, the created on purpose and for purpose coffee mugs. We'll send you that. You'll be getting a monthly newsletter from me, letting you know what's going on. And we're going to begin to add, as we go through the summer, some more opportunities for us to come into community, communicate a little bit more, and send you guys some more stuff. But would you pray about if the podcast has been a blessing to you, if it's encouraged you in any way, I want you to pray about joining us as a financial sponsor and a partner, and consider coming in as a $40 easy give plan per month, and help us continue to reach people to encourage them and awaken them to become who they were born to be. If you're at a place right now where you say, Darren, we just came out of a pandemic and I'm struggling with the job, I just don't have it. Listen, that's wonderful. That it's not wonderful that you're there, but I'm saying then this opportunity isn't for you right now, and that's totally okay. Continue to enjoy the podcast for absolutely nothing and just allow us to pour into your life. But if you're at a place where you're saying, I've been looking for a place to invest some more money, to give some more money, to become more generous, we'd love for you to join us here on the podcast. And I'm going to ask you about this again a couple different times, or probably every episode through the summer, to see if we can't begin to close up some of the financial shortfall we have to make sure we can keep going forward as a ministry. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And God, I just pray for every one of our podcast listeners right now. I thank you for the plans you have for their life. I thank you for the brown paper blessings that may come into their life this week. I ask that you'd give them the perspective that you have, that as your child that is dearly loved and created on purpose and for a purpose, that they can't fail, they can't lose, they either win or they learn. Maybe take that into this week, and maybe see great things happen. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, guys, until I talk to you next week, remember this: God's for you, not against you. He's near you, not far from you, and he's created you on purpose and for a purpose. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for watching this episode of the Daron Earlywine podcast. See you guys.